Favorite radio show. Stream CBC podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 4 degrees with cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew and Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham laid out their plans this morning to build homes faster. The CBC's Cameron McLean has your details.
The leaders of the province and its capital city both spoke at an event organized by the Manitoba Home Builders Association. Both were asked for their plans to speed up housing construction. Kinew says it's taking too long for Manitoba Hydro to hook up new homes to the electrical grid. He says his government will work with Hydro officials to speed up that process by the second quarter of next year. Gillingham says the city is hiring a consultant to study the entire development process. He hopes this will identify pinch points that are slowing down construction. He says the city has approved 12,000 housing permits since last December, but only 3,000 have got full approval. A Conference Board of Canada report released today says housing starts in Winnipeg are expected to fall this year, but rise again in future years. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg's population growth is expected to slow next year. That's according to a projection from the Conference Board of Canada. As the CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, reduced immigration is expected to be the likely culprit.
In recent years, Winnipeg has experienced relatively rapid population growth. The Manitoba capital grew by 7% over the past 2 years alone. In a new economic outlook for the city, the Conference Board of Canada says this won't continue. Population growth is expected to be 2.6% this year and closer to 1% next year. The board says reduced federal immigration will slow Winnipeg's growth, especially since new arrivals tend to leave the city for other markets. This has implications for provincial tax revenue. It may also ease pressure on housing. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A 51-year-old youth center worker has been arrested for sex-related crimes. It stems from an investigation which began a year ago when a youth came forward reporting having been sexually assaulted while incarcerated. Investigators allege between 2022 and 2023, while the survivor was in custody, a juvenile counselor formed a relationship with her. He provided her with extra canteen items and in exchange allegedly sexually assaulted her. On Tuesday, the Sex Crimes Unit charged Troy David Wenzel with sexual assault, sexual exploitation, and obtaining sexual services from a person under 18. He was released on conditions preventing him from accessing anyone under the age of 18. We're learning more about the condition of Winnipeg-born basketball star Chad Posthumus. The Winnipeg Sea Bear player suffered a brain aneurysm on Saturday during a training session. The team says he underwent a long, complex surgery that successfully repaired the large aneurysm. Unfortunately, the team says there were complications and Posthumus is now in critical condition in the intensive care unit. His family is asking for privacy, but thanks everyone for their outpouring of support. Posthumus was the first player signed to the Sea Bears. In less than 12 hours, 3 pedestrians in Winnipeg have been taken to hospital after being hit by vehicles. The first happened last night around 10 on Portage near Polo Park. Police say a woman in her 30s was trying to cross eastbound traffic when she was hit. She was taken to hospital in critical condition, but is being upgraded to stable with serious injuries. Around 6:30 this morning, police say a man and a woman in their 30s tried to cross Chief Peguis Trail between Main and Henderson, where there was no crosswalk. Both were hit by a vehicle. They were taken to hospital in unstable condition and have been upgraded to stable since. The drivers in both cases stayed on the scene. Anyone who saw either crash or dash cam footage is asked to contact police. Canada Post and the Canadian Union of Postal Workers remain at the negotiating table today as the clock ticks down. The union will be able to strike at just after midnight Eastern Time tonight. It's also possible Canada Post could impose a lockout as of 8 Eastern tomorrow morning. The union says the two sides remain far apart on wages, pensions, and medical leave. The satirical news publication The Onion is now the owner of InfoWars. InfoWars is a right-wing conspiracy website formerly owned by Alex Jones. It was sold at a bankruptcy auction after Jones lost a $1 billion defamation suit. The suit was filed by the families of the Sandy Hook victims after Jones claimed the 2012 elementary school shooting was a hoax. It's believed The Onion is planning to turn the website into a parody of itself. A Winnipeg family is in Swiftie heaven today.
I'm so sick of running as fast as I can. Wondering if I'd get there quicker if I was a man.
Angie Lamourand, her husband, daughter, and granddaughter are all in Toronto for the Taylor Swift The Eras show. The singer's performing 6 shows in Toronto. Lamourand says they've already been to the Rogers Centre to get their official merchandise. And she says the atmosphere is incredible.
They have the friendship bracelets outside, the giant ones on the building. All the people were lined up and they were playing Taylor Swift. They were already trading bracelets. My granddaughter traded bracelets with a ton of people.
Lamourand says her whole family, including her husband, are each dressing up to represent a different Taylor Swift era for tonight's concert. Delightful. In Winnipeg, mainly cloudy, a high of 6 degrees today in Winnipeg. And we have those cloudy skies. Brandon, a high of 7 and mainly cloudy. Dauphin, a chance of showers, a high around +8. Flin Flon, rain, and a high around +1. In Thompson, mainly cloudy, a high of -3 degrees. And in Churchill, you're seeing mainly cloudy conditions today with a high around -7 degrees. Right now, you're listening to CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM.
Magandang hapon. Good afternoon, Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 97.9 FM in Brandon, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, and 990 AM in a pretty large swath of the province. I'm sitting in for Janet Stewart here on the program. Lots to come. In this first half hour, the carbon footprint of meat processing in Carman is about to get a lot smaller thanks to some innovative new technology. We will hear details of that coming up in this half hour. Also ahead, details on a new immigration initiative in Brandon that helps skilled workers find not just jobs, but community too. And our call-in question today, with lots of changes to social media in the news this past week, we want to ask you in our call-in conversation, how safe do you feel using social media? Call us 204-780-0893. Text us 204-588-3797. And then we'll continue that conversation after your 12:30 local news. Marshall Hodgins is on the control today. Wendy Parker is our studio director. Kevin Nipatebo is our streaming producer. And hello to the folks who are streaming us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. I did post our call-in question for 12:30 on Facebook. So if you're unable to call us, you can also leave a message there, and we'd love to play your thoughts and share them with the listeners here on the program. Just about 8 minutes after 12 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. The province and City of Brandon are launching a new immigration initiative. The Brandon Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program Immigration Initiative aims to address a shortage of skilled workers. Katrina Kasula is with the Brandon Neighborhood Renewal Corporation. The CBC's Chelsea Kemp spoke with her earlier.
Newcomers bring in new skills, different kind of experience that would also help out and to change the landscape of the economic development, right? Because like with the vast experiences from the different point of views that they bring in from their different countries, they can help out shape for like a city like ours to be in par with the global scale, right? So that's really why I think it is important to have newcomers be part of our workforce in our economic development.
Brandon, we've done different initiatives. We're going to be joining the provincial nominee program. What does that say about how we view and value having newcomers come here?
Our labor market landscape is also unique from those that are from, like in Winnipeg, and as well as the other rural areas, right? So if the plan is to continue to build on that economic development or economic growth that we are seeing for Brandon, if we are also getting in some people, we want to make sure as well that we can offer them what kind of labor market is really a match to them, right? A lot of times it happens that people come into Brandon and they leave Brandon because they can't find the industry or they can't understand the labor market that we have. But through the program that we have right now, it's more of like really highlighting what are those industries that we have right now, and at the same time also navigating what other supports can we give to other industries that are also existing but are in need of workers. And Brandon sees that newcomers can help out in putting in those talents and for those talents and skills to be imparted to these organizations and different industries and help them grow as well.
We talk about newcomers kind of helping fill labor shortages, they're helping with workforce demands, but what can the city and community do to also help them feel welcome and feel at home so they want to stay?
Well, that's a very good question because that's what my program is about. What I'm trying to do is like to create welcoming communities. If you will also like to check on the research of like what are those characteristics of a welcoming community, we are almost there. It's just that we need to create those meaningful partnerships also with other organizations for these organizations to be known to the newcomers. Because like a lot of these newcomers also comes in with their families, right? So, for example, we know that like the city has the youth center, we have recreational programs, West Manitoba Immigrant Services has family programs and youth programs, but there are also other organizations such as 4-H and also Huddle that can also build up more partnerships that not just connect newcomers with their fellow newcomers, but also with the entire community as well. And we're not just talking about like their schools, but also like that can be kids from other schools. It can be youth from other schools because sometimes it happens as well that that yes, you are studying in this school, but then you don't feel like you found your niche there. But like through the programs that we have in our community, they can find those need there where they actually belong, right? Another thing would be like to connect them with other service providers to create those meaningful partnerships. During the welcoming week that I had over in September, one of the highlights that I have there as well is the connection to the Indigenous community for newcomers to learn about the spirit of powwow, how that coming together, learning from each other, listening to the different experiences, brings out the intersectionality of all the experiences that can help out in navigating like where are we at with the gaps that we have in our community that doesn't just affect newcomers but also affects the other members of the community, right? Let's just say, for example, with housing. Housing is not just like a newcomer concern. It is already a concern that we're having as a community itself. So the intersectionality of that experience, the experience coming from a newcomer perspective, from other community members' perspective, can help out to navigate what can we do more. How do we navigate about providing that safe spaces, that community spaces, and not just about like being segregated, but actually like working towards that feeling of community.
Katrina Kasula is with the Brandon Neighborhood Renewal Corporation, speaking with the CBC's Chelsea Kemp. The City of Brandon and the province officially launches the program this afternoon. Tune in to your CBC Winnipeg News for details as they become available.
Manitoba is the kind of place that draws you in. Every day it's growing, it's changing. Just when you think you've got it figured out, though, there's something new to understand. I'm Marcy Marcusa, host of the CBC Daily Podcast. This is Manitoba. I've covered the news from the rail line in Churchill to the border in Emerson, and it's talking about the local stories that help us understand this place. That's what This is Manitoba is all about. Find it on CBC Listen or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
14 minutes after 12 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal in for Janet Stewart. This is Radio Noon at 97.9 FM in Brandon, 990 AM in Carman, and 89.3 FM here in Winnipeg. Lots to come on the program. We're going to head to Carman, where a meat plant there has expanded by 35,000 square feet to implement some environmentally important waste-to-energy technology. We're going to hear more about that shortly. Hello to the folks as well watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. We're expecting pretty much the same forecast for much of the listening region, mainly cloudy conditions with a southeast wind. That's for for Winnipeg, a temperature high of 6 degrees expected today as that fog dissipates. Should be dissipated by now, but it's still doing its thing, so we're working on that. Mainly cloudy for Brandon, high of 7 degrees. Mainly cloudy for Dauphin, and a slight chance of showers, a high of 8 degrees. Up in Thompson, mainly cloudy and a high of -3. In Churchill today, mainly cloudy conditions is what Environment Canada is calling for, with a northwest wind becoming light this afternoon. The temperature will stay near steady, close to steady at 7 degrees. Cloudy and 3 in Winnipeg, 4 here in downtown Winnipeg, mostly cloudy and 4 in Brandon, cloudy and 2 in Dauphin. In Thompson, mostly cloudy and -4. And at the airport in Churchill, it is cloudy with -8 degrees as the current temperature. Just about 16 minutes after 12 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, I'm Faith Fundal. Cutting emissions, converting organic waste into energy, cost-effective sustainability. Some of the key benefits of a new waste-to-energy technology called ROC, poised to help the planet and their bottom line. ROC stands for Rapid Organic Converter, and it's now installed in a 35,000 purpose-built expansion of the True North Foods facility in Carman, the first commercial installation of ROC ever in the world, developed by a Manitoba-based company. Calvin Vogue is president and CEO of True North Foods and joins us by Zoom now. Hello, Calvin.
Hi, thank you very much.
And thanks for making space to talk. I know you have lots on the go today. ROC, people may not have heard what ROC is. Can you explain what it is and how it was developed right here in Manitoba?
Well, the ROC is short form for Rapid Organic Converter, and it's a pretty cool story. It's a Manitoba company that basically enhanced or developed this machinery based on relatively new technology that takes organic waste and converts it back into heat energy, which we can then displace natural gas and electricity. So it's a very good news story in terms of environment. It's green. It's displacing product that would otherwise have no value and going into a landfill, and we're getting energy from it and displacing other energy that we'd have to use to heat the plant. So we're very excited about it.
How surprising is it that it took this long? I mean, this waste has existed before. How surprising is it that it took this long to figure this out?
Well, I don't know how surprising it is. I mean, I guess, in terms of industry-wide throughout the world, there's a lot of large plants that have other solutions to deal with this waste. We don't necessarily have those solutions in the province because we're a much smaller plant. So, it's not that every single, plant that is in this business would be able to make use of this. But I think for mid-sized plants, it definitely holds a position.
Describe which sector of the ag business could this ROC installation work well or is purposefully designed for?
Well, our machine is designed specifically to handle specified risk material for BSE coming out of a beef slaughter plant. And specified risk material have no other place that they're allowed to be disposed of other than in Manitoba, or other than in a landfill in Manitoba. So, that in itself is huge because we're taking all of that product out of the landfill and converting it back to heat. So in terms of some other industries that could make use of it, really anything that has organic waste, it doesn't necessarily have to come from a beef slaughter plant. It could come from anything that would make sense to divert it from a landfill and put it through a rapid organic converter and make heat or steam for electricity or anything like that.
Calvin, when people hear we're going to burn it, a whole bunch of things in people's minds might come up, and in particular, concerns over the environment. That's actually not, while technically that's what you're doing, or the process is similar to that, you're not actually burning it and just letting the what comes out of the burning go nowhere, right?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a misconception. We're not actually burning it in the true sense of an incinerator. We're not using any fuel other than to get the initial ignition started. But once the initial ignition is started and running, there is no fuel going into that machine. The product itself becomes the fuel. And in terms of emissions and particulates going into the air, it's almost nothing but water vapor. Very, very, our testing shows that almost zero particulates are being emitted into the air as well. So That way, there's much less environmental pollution, much less energy being used than in other forms of dealing with that waste.
It sounds like this process is more efficient. Like, is that a good way of characterizing it?
Yeah, for sure. It's way more efficient. You're not spending energy to transport it away from the plant. You're not spending energy at the dump to deal with it there. You're displacing energy that you would otherwise use to create heat that you need to run the plant. So it's way more efficient than the traditional method of dealing with SRM.
What is the future of ROC or ROC? Do you envision seeing more jobs being created as a result of this?
I would think yes. I think here in Manitoba that definitely provides a solution to a problem that inhibits growth. So as soon as you have a solution to any kind of problem, and you can then say, okay, well, that problem is solved and we can now grow, the indirect long-term result of that should be more business, more job, better for everybody.
Thanks for making space today, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take good care.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Calvin Boggs, President and CEO of True North Foods.
Hi, I'm Saroja Coelho, host of the Saturday afternoon call-in show Just Asking, now expanding to 2 hours.
And I'm Ian Hannamansing, host of the Sunday afternoon call-in show Cross Country Checkup.
Whether it's world events
or what's happening in your backyard,
every weekend we connect Canada live.
That's Just Asking with Saroja Coelho, Saturday afternoons at 4 Eastern.
And Cross Country Checkup with Ian Hannamansing, Sunday afternoons at 4 Eastern on CBC Radio 1.
Coming up to 22 minutes after 12 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and as well everywhere on the CBC Listen app and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. In just about 10 minutes' time, we will open our phone lines for our call-in conversation. We are asking folks, how safe do you feel on social media? We'll hear more from a technology columnist. Lots of changes to social media in the news in this past week. So we'd like to hear from you. How safe do you feel using social media? You can text us right now if you can't call us, 204-588-3797, 204-588-3797, or after the 12:30 news, 204-780-0873, 204-780-0893. That is, and we'll have that conversation. First, though, as you've also been hearing, Taylor Swift's Eras Tour has arrived in Canada. The first of her 6 sold-out Toronto shows happens tonight. And for any Swifties who aren't able to make it to one of the Canadian dates, this is a throwback from 2006. It's Taylor's debut single called Tim McGraw.
He said the way my blue eyes shined, but those Georgia stars to shame that night. I said that's a lie. Just a boy in a Chevy truck that had a tendency of getting stuck on back roads at night, and I was right there beside him all summer long. And then the time we woke up to find that summer gone. But when you think Tim McGraw, I hope you think my favorite song, the one we dance to all night long. The moon like a spotlight on the lake. When you think happiness, I hope you think that little black dress. Think of my head on your chest and my old faded blue jeans. When you think Tim McGraw, I hope you think of me. September saw a month of tears, and thanking God that you weren't here to see me like that. But in a box beneath my bed is a letter that you never read from 3 summers back. It's hard not to find it all a little bittersweet. Looking back on all of that, it's nice to believe. When you think Tim McGraw, I hope you think my favorite song, the one we hope you think of me. And I'm back for the first time since then. I'm standing on your street, and there's a letter left on your doorstep, and the first thing that you read is when you think Tim McGraw. I hope you think my favorite song. Someday you'll turn your radio on. I hope it takes you back to that place when you think happiness. I hope you think that little black dress. Think of my head on your chest and my old faded blue jeans. When you think Tim McGraw, I hope you think of me. Oh, think of me. He said the way my blue eyes shine put those Georgia stars to shame that night. I said that's a lie.
Oh, I remember 2006. Her song Teardrops from My Guitar, I think is what it's called. I played it over and over and over and over again, and my poor coworkers were not very happy with me. That tune was called Tim McGraw from 2006. Taylor Swift performing that debut single. We're just about 27 minutes after 12 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal in for Janet Stewart. Krista Vivian wanted to challenge herself going into her 40s. She decided to mark her 40th year by completing 40 paddles in 40 different bodies of water across southern Ontario. After 6 months, she completed her goal last week. She tells CBC Radio what inspired her.
Well, I just kind of had a really bad year, just kind of down in the dumps and kind of getting stuck in my routine of, being a mom and trying to balance everything. And I was cruising the Facebook with the morning coffee, and I saw a friend of mine had just finished swimming 50 lakes for his 50th birthday to celebrate that. I go, isn't that cool? And didn't think much of it. But then as things started warming up and was thinking, oh my gosh, I am turning 40. Like, what am I going to do about that? I decided to really stop dwelling on that and just start this challenge of paddling to take my mind off of it. It's not my favorite thing to do. No, I like to be outside and just being active. I worked at a summer camp when I was younger, so I love paddling, but more so in a canoe, especially being a taller person. The kayak can be kind of confining at times. I like swimming and just being outside, but the kayaking was easy for me to do. I had the kayak, and I live on a river. It's something I do often for exercise and just to take a break. So I thought, I do this often enough. Why don't I mix up the locations? And the main thing I wanted to get out of the summer was to have fun for everybody in my family, not just for me to go kayaking and everybody sort of just tailor around that. So I had schedules and made sure that we had to bring my bikes sometimes for the kids to drive if they weren't going to be kayaking, and my husband's work schedules and distance and financials too. Like, it would have been really cool to do all the Great Lakes or some more significant lakes. My husband will be having a significant birthday coming up, and he's talking about doing walks in the woods with his wife. So I'll be joining him on those maybe. I inspired a friend. I don't know. We'll just see where it takes. But I think I would like to try to do this again. I'm not going to do 41, 42, 43, but I will continue to challenge myself in different ways. I wanted to try cross stitching, so maybe I'll do something less physically demanding and do that. So we'll see where it takes. But I think I'm definitely going to do it for 50, because I definitely have to top those 50 lakes.
Krista Vivian recently completed 40 paddles in 40 bodies of water, and she hopes to inspire people to challenge themselves, just like how she did. She was speaking with CBC Radio earlier. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app, as well on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Thanks very much for joining us. Lots to come in our next half hour. You've been hearing also lots of changes to social media in the news this past week. We want to ask you during our call-in conversation, how safe do you feel using social media now? You can call us 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. Text us 204-588-3797. We'll have that conversation coming up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 4 degrees with cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew and Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham laid out their plans this morning to build homes faster. Both spoke at an event organized by the Manitoba Home Builders Association, and both were asked for their plans to speed up housing construction. Kinew says it's taking too long for Manitoba Hydro to hook up new homes to the electrical grid. He says his government will work with hydro officials to speed up that process by the second quarter of next year. Gillingham says the city's hiring a consultant to study the entire development process. He hopes this will identify pinch points that are slowing down construction. And he says the city has approved 12,000 housing permits since last December, but only 3,000 have gotten full approval. A Conference Board of Canada report released today says housing starts in Winnipeg are expected to fall this year, but rise again in future years. The big weekend is almost here. The Bombers and Argos in the Grey Cup. Winnipeg linebacker Tony Jones will have some extra motivation when he suits up for Sunday's game. The first-year Bombers family will be watching from the stands for the first time in his 3-year CFL career. Jones is from Castleberry, Florida, and played his college football at Texas Tech. He's amped up knowing his family will be in Vancouver to watch him.
When it's game day, it's just a lot of adrenaline. I'm wired, I'm ready to go, but, them being in the stands is just the extra motivation, extra fire in me to just go out there and go harder.
Jones has played a key role in the middle of Winnipeg's defense since starting middle linebacker Adam Bighill was lost for the season in early September. The Bombers are aiming for a third Grey Cup win in the past 5 seasons. And it's the day one Winnipeg family's been waiting for, along with 50,000 other Taylor Swift fans in Toronto. Tonight, the singer brings her The Eras Tour to Rogers Stadium for the first of 6 shows. Angie Lamarand is there with her husband, daughter, and 8-year-old granddaughter for the concert. She says you could feel the energy building as they were driving in from the airport.
Once we got on the highway, we saw billboards. We love you, Taylor. Just all different Christmas lights that say Swiftmas.
Lamarad says they tackled the lines for merchandise outside the Rogers Centre. She says everyone's been trading friendship bracelets. Lamarand says each member of her family is dressing up to represent a different Taylor Swift era for the show tonight. My favorite era is the Christmas tree era. Faith. She had a Christmas tree farm she grew up on,
Really?
I'm told.
Is that true, really?
Yeah, that's apparently is part of her origin story.
So there you go.
And
After 2006, I didn't pay attention, so I was stuck on the 2006 debut. All right, thanks very much.
soon.
That's Matt Humphrey from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Magandang araw, hello Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. Hello as well to the folks streaming us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. We have Marshall Hodgins on the controls, Wendy Parker, our studio director, and Kevin Nipatebo, who is the fancy person pressing all the fancy buttons so that we look good on TV. The other fancy person in studio now. Hello, Riley Lechuk.
Do you want to hear my Taylor story?
100%, yeah.
So a friend of mine is a airline pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Walked into Pearson this morning in Toronto, greeted with a giant Christmas tree and Taylor Swift blasting in the airport.
Wow. They're really, I was at the airport yesterday in Toronto, and I knew that there were a lot of people coming in. I did not experience any Swifties, though, so there you go. Will we be seeing any Christmas-like things anytime soon?
Well, if you're in Western Manitoba, yes. In our long-range forecast for Winnipeg, I do have some light snow starting to be introduced into that 7-day. So we'll talk about that as it inches closer. But for now, though, we are looking at a little bit of snow through western and northwestern Manitoba, which is where I'll start this afternoon. 3 degrees in Winnipeg at the moment under this cloud and some of this low fog that is still kind of hanging around parts of eastern Manitoba into northwestern Ontario. 4 degrees in Brandon, but where we have started to see, curiously enough, a few little breaks in the cloud. Brandon's at 4. Melitta's at 9 right now. We're starting to see a little bit of that sunshine start to poke through. So not too far apart, but quite a difference in temperatures there. Compare that to Swan River and the Pas, which are both at 1 right now. That's where we're starting to see some of that rain and some of that light snow falling through the afternoon hours here, all part of an area of low pressure that's moving through Saskatchewan right now. The rest of us in Manitoba, mainly cloudy at the moment. As I mentioned, a few little hints of sunshine in that very southwest corner of Manitoba, but over the Riding Mountains, looking at some light snow right now. Swan River, Dauphin, mostly a rain event at the moment. Places north of Swan River into the Pas and into the Flin Flon area, we are looking at this snow beginning as we get through the later afternoon into the evening tonight. Thompson, Norway House, looking at snow beginning as we get into the early morning hours tomorrow as this area of low pressure continues to track northeast. A few flurries coming Saturday for the Hudson Bay coast into Gillam and Shamattawa. Right behind that, a Colorado low starts to move into Manitoba. So one right after another here. Into Brandon, we see some rain starting through the early afternoon hours on Saturday and some light snow into the higher elevations around the Riding Mountains, I should say. This becomes a rain event for Winnipeg as we get through later Saturday afternoon. The possibility of some light snow into early Sunday morning. Talking snowfall amounts for western and northern Manitoba, could pick up maybe a couple centimeters of snow in those higher elevations around the Duck and the Riding Mountains, more like 2 to 4 centimeters, maybe locally up to 5 in places like Flin Flon through the Thompson region, Norway House even maybe looking at a couple centimeters. High temperatures today, 6 in Winnipeg and Brandon. Dauphin also looking at 6 today. In the long range, I've got Winnipeg at 8 tomorrow, a mainly sunny sky. 6 and 3 for Saturday and Sunday with some of those showers through Saturday afternoon into Sunday, and then 6 and 3 for Monday and Tuesday with a good chance of light snow once we get to the later part of Tuesday.
Every day,
a little bit of everything happening.
Yeah, it's a bit of everything, and every day that I can take my scooter to work. I'm okay with because I know that it's time. It'll be time soon.
You know, you just have to put chains on the tires and you'll be fine.
You'll have to convince my partner to do that, so that's another conversation. All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
It's Riley Lechek from your CBC Forecast Center. He'll be back later on Up to Speed to give you an update on your forecast, and of course you can find his full forecast on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. We're at 37 minutes after 12 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Social media has headlined the news, been in the news headlines in recent weeks. First, the federal government announced that TikTok must close down its Canadian offices. But despite security concerns, Canadians can still scroll and post on the video app. Just yesterday, Australia announced it's planning a social media ban for kids under the age of 16. The platforms will have to ensure compliance. Today on our call-in conversation, we want to talk about how safe you're feeling about social media, either yourself or for your kids and teens. You can call us, our live line, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. Of course, you can text us, 204-588-3797, and we'll continue this conversation. Carmi Levy is a technology analyst and journalist. We've talked about this before. Hi, Carmi.
Good to be with you, Faith. Thanks for having me.
For people who didn't hear a conversation about TikTok's office closure, seems a bit of a paradox that the feds feels that it's safe enough for the app to remain in this country, but not safe enough for the offices to remain open. Break this down for us. How does this make sense to you?
Yeah, it doesn't. Quite simply, the government had a national security review and said, as a result of that review, they're ordering the shutdown of TikTok's offices in Toronto and Vancouver, saying that represents a clear and present danger to Canadians, because we know, of course, TikTok, owned by ByteDance, it's a Chinese company. There have always been concerns about where the data that the app is collecting ends up, and the concerns are that the Chinese government is accessing that information and using it to meddle in our affairs. So it doesn't make sense for them to shut down the offices, but not the app. And then to carry the hypocrisy even further, the federal government continues to use TikTok as a tool for marketing, for messaging, communications, and PR. Provincial governments across the country are also using it. So you're not taking away the platform, the actual technology that's the risk, but you are going to ask the people who, sell ads and do admin support to stop doing what they do. So I think it shows that they're trying to do something, but that something doesn't make any sense. The technologist in me is just looking at going, I need to know more.
And so what do you think Canadians ought to make out of this? Because as we've mentioned, the app still exists. People can still use it.
The app still exists. People are still on it. The risk, as the National Security Review has outlined, is still there. And we're still exposing ourselves to it, not only on this app, but on any other app with questionable genealogy. Every time we install it, every time we use it, every time we connect to the platform, we don't even have to be on our phones to use TikTok. We can access it on our regular computers as well, and the risk continues there too. So, if you're using that app or any app, frankly, I think you owe it to yourself to start asking questions about what information is it collecting, where's that information going, am I comfortable with that degree of sharing in exchange for the value that I get from the app. We all enjoy TikTok, but if that means that raises the possibility that we might be spied on, we might want to give that a second thought.
For folks who are listening, we want to ask you, what sorts of questions do you have about social media, and what sorts of things did you start thinking about when you heard the government decide to close the offices of TikTok here in Canada? Perhaps it's not something that worries you. Let us know what you think. 204-780-0893 is our live line. 204-780-0893. You can also text us 204-588-3797. Talk about the main security concerns here. So if we can't get specific answers from the feds, Carmi, what sorts of questions do you think people ought to be considering themselves after hearing about this?
First of all, take a look at your phone and look at it from the perspective of every time you install an app, it asks for permissions, and those permissions include the collection and sharing of data. And so ask yourself, what is it collecting on me? So where is it pulling that information from? Does it include my contacts? Does it include location information? Does it include the camera and the mic? Because, of course, this is TikTok. It's a video app. Of course it would. And are we comfortable that it's all that data is only being used to serve up ads to us, to make sure that the ads that we see are relevant? Or do we just not know? Or am I no longer using the app as I once did? Maybe we've moved on to something else, but is the app even still sitting on my phone? Because if that's the case, just get rid of it. Because even if you're not using an app, we call them zombie apps or ghost apps, if it's sitting there in the background on your phone, it's still collecting that information that you gave it permission to collect, even if you're not using it, and it's still sharing it. So start being a little bit more critical about what you're using, the context within which you're using it, and whether you're even still using it at all, and start pulling things off of your phone if you're no longer using them day to day.
I know some folks in my networks started removing permissions. So you know how when you open certain social media apps, it asks, would you like to share your contact list to see if we can connect you with other people? I know some folks have started deleting that kind of data, so it doesn't exist there. Carmi, yeah. I should correct, I was giving a text line and I was giving the wrong number. So if you want to text us to tell us what you think about this conversation, 204-588-7355. I'm new, sorry. 204-588-7355. Do you feel safe? How do you feel about the safety of social media? Perhaps you've made some changes to permissions like what I described there. Let us know. You can also call our live line 204-780-0893. Perhaps you're confused about what this all means. Carmi is here to also answer your questions. Again, 204-780-0893 or by text 204-588-7355. Carmi, let's talk about the social media ban in Australia. Is this actually possible?
Well, I mean, they're going to go ahead with this law. They announced last week that they're proceeding with it. It's sort of been in the works for a number of months. The Australian government, of course, has always been very progressive in terms of introducing new sort of leading edge tech-centric legislation. And this is just the latest example. And they finally got the agreement of all the other parties. So this is it's a nonpartisan kind of thing. Everybody agrees, at least in political leadership in Australia, that something needs to be done. So, so it will become law at some point, probably next year. The question becomes, how feasible is that, right? So how do you ensure that everybody who is under the age of 16 in Australia does not use any social media app, and which is a huge undertaking. The logistics of that honestly make my head hurt, because kids are smart. Kids I raised 3 kids, so I know full well that my kids were very adept at working their way around any restrictions that we ever put on them. And ultimately, we decided it simply wasn't worth trying to restrict them, because they're just going to bust out anyway. And I think that's what's going to happen in Australia is that this very, they call it a world-leading law, that it's all-encompassing, no grandfathering, no exceptions, no workarounds, nothing. That you are going to see enough leaks in there that it will not be a national ban. I think it's more of sending a message that something needs to be done about the harm that social media apps are causing to our young kids, and at least initiating a national conversation. But I think there's an understanding there too that there's no way they're going to get everyone. And I think if you're a kid in Australia and you really want to be using your social media apps going forward, you're still going to find a way, come heck or high water.
For folks who are listening, would you welcome a ban here in Canada? How might your life change if you're a parent and you have kids under or teenagers under the age of 16? If that happened here, how would it change your life? Call our call-in line 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can text us 204-588-7355. Carmi, would you welcome a social media ban here? Would it be possible?
I don't think it's feasible at all, but I would still welcome it, which might sound a little bit strange, but hear me out here. I don't believe that they work at all. However, the mere fact that it would be introduced, the mere fact that it would get everyone talking about it, that it might get everyone complaining and raging debate going, both in the digital and real world spaces, I think that's a good thing. I think we've been using social media with our blinders on for the better part of 20 years, and we haven't had this conversation. So as a tool of creating awareness and creating action around the negatives of social media and what it's doing to our kids and how we need to do better to protect them, I think it's an important catalyst for action and for change. And it kind of gets the ball rolling. If we expect the government to wave a wand and then magically it solves this problem, no, I think that's unrealistic on any day. However, to at least get us going on it, I think it's a really good place to start. But I think also, and I say this as a parent, the ultimate solution to this isn't going to come from any law at all. It's always going to come from relationships that you build with your kids, trust relationships, conversations that you have in the home, and ensuring that just like we raise our kids to be properly street-proofed when they head out, onto the mean streets of Winnipeg, that we give them the same kind of treatment in the digital space as well. We give them digital street-proofing, and that doesn't come from a federal law or any law. It comes from mom, dad, and caregivers.
I know there are parents listening out there, and perhaps even younger folks. What conversations have you had with your parents or with your kids about how to stay safe, or what kind of safety things you need to know about or consider? Call our live line, 204-780-0893. We're not getting very many calls today, but I know that there are people out there who have thoughts here. Let us know how you've had your conversation with your young ones about how to stay safe on social media. 204-780-0893. You can text us 204-588-7355. Let's talk about this idea of digital street proofing, Carmi. What do you mean by that?
So that, for example, if you look at the real street proofing, back in the day when my parents taught that to me, it was helping me understand the kinds of things that I might run into when I took the bus to go downtown. And when I was on the streets, the people that I would encounter, the kinds of appropriate behaviors, where I could go for help if I felt that I needed it, who I could trust, who I shouldn't trust. And I think the same logic translates really effectively into the digital space. It's helping kids understand what are the risks of leading part of your life online. What are the kinds of malevolent actors, the predators, the scary people who you might run into? What are the signs that you are, in fact, crossing paths with someone who could threaten you? And what are the appropriate responses? Where are those safe resources, safe havens, safe people in the digital space that you can reach out to? What's the first thing that you should do when you think that you're being targeted? And so ultimately, it's equipping them with the right set of digital tools so they can handle themselves on a smartphone just as safely as they can on the street.
It sounds simple, but having this kind of conversation about safety can also bring about a whole bunch of emotions from parents, right? Mm-hmm. How do you, is it a hard conversation to have, or is it as simple as how you've described it?
It sounds simple, but of course, it's one of those your mileage may vary kind of situations. Every kid is different. Every relationship between children and parents will be different. And it's that context that I think every parent really needs to understand and appreciate. And so recognize that, in some cases, it's some households that I'm familiar with, friends of mine who've talked to me about this very issue. The going in perspective of the parents is what I call aggressive or adversarial. And it's, I will not allow my child to do this. And it's all about preventing them from accessing things. It's all about limiting their actions. And that sort of approach generally forces kids to see parents as adversarial, and that they can't have that conversation with them, that they feel that they need to go underground, hide their activities from them. And so the key, no matter what style of a child or a parent you might be, I think is to really, first of all, abandon the aggressive and adversarial approach and recognize that you're both in this journey together. And so if kids know that they can go to mom and dad because mom and dad are using the same apps as they are, and it's important for mom and dad to have visibility into that, that they can talk to them about anything and that it will be a no judgment zone. I think that's a really important first place to start, so that no matter how ultimately that relationship plays out, you're at least on that journey together, and kids don't feel like they have to pull away from mom and dad, because that's usually when problems happen. They get into trouble, and rather than going for help, they feel that they need to hide it, which of course allows them to dig the hole even deeper. Parents don't want that. Kids don't want that. You start by opening those lines of communication, not closing them.
I'm sure this will not be the last time we speak. Thanks for your time today, Carmi, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take good care.
Appreciate being here, Faith. Thank you.
Carmi Levy is a technology analyst and journalist. We reached him today in London, Ontario.
There's more to community than location. It's about the spaces we share, physically and digitally, the points of view that divide or unite us. Gen Z, let's get to know each other. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to RRC Polytech's Notre Dame campus November 18th to 29th. Live radio, live streaming, and your point of view. Let's talk. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
Are there better ways for us to talk to each other? And could that help us build a better society? Novelist and poet Ian Williams wants to start a conversation about conversations. Hi, I'm Nala Ayed. Join me all next week as Ideas presents the 2024 CBC Massey Lectures, What I Mean to Say, Remaking Conversations in Our Time.
Ideas, weeknights at 8:30 in Newfoundland, and on demand on CBC Listen.
Coming up to 52 minutes after 12 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and of course everywhere on the CBC Listen app and our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Hello, thanks for joining us on the program today. We have a bit of time for a song now. Let's listen to Sarah Kay, who is a musician from Lake Helen First Nation in northwestern Ontario. Though young, she's used to touring. Kay would accompany her dad, a counselor, speaking and singing in schools when she was just 12. From her new EP, this is Sarah Kay and 25.
Feels like time goes by slowly, then out of the blue you're 25. They ask, when do the kids come? But I'm just a big kid inside. I can't believe they want us to have it all figured out by 18. 'Cause looking back, I didn't know who I wanted to be. Slow down, take your time. Wish someone that told me to slow down once you blink. You're 25 to My taxman tells me to keep all of my expenses organized, but I'll go a full day without eating before Take your time. Wish someone had told me to slow down. 'Cause once you blink, you're 25.
From Lake Helen First Nation, that was Sarah Kay with a tune called 25. Her new EP is called Mada Dizzy. That's, again, Mada Dizzy by Sarah Kay. That tune you heard was 25. Coming up on Up to Speed on CBC Radio 1 this afternoon, Manitoba is hoping to combat Islamophobia, starting with schools. It's announced an anti-Islamophobia working group late last month. We're going to hear from one of the 11 members about what this working group does. That's first up on Up to Speed, just after the 3 o'clock World This Hour. And coming up at 3:35, we're going to hear more from the organizers of the Make Poverty History Manitoba annual fundraising concert. It's happening tonight at the West End Cultural Centre. The doors open at 7:15 and the show is at 8 p.m. Again at the West End Cultural Centre. Stay tuned for more on that. I'll be emceeing and hosting that stage this evening, so if you can make it, we'll see you there. Tickets available at tickets.wec.ca. Our technician today is Marshall Hodgins. Wendy Parker is our studio director. Kevin Nipatebo is our YouTube live stream producer. Thanks very much for joining us today on Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1 and on YouTube. Mag-ingat po kayo and take good care wherever you are. Stay tuned. Coming up on CBC Radio 1, Quirks and Quirks.